Hey, how's it going, guys? It is a beautiful Sunday afternoon. I was actually going to go outside for a nice run, but I figured I'd knock this out of the way. This is kind of a project video slash kind of product review. What you're looking at here is an SE Knives SE4. I've already reviewed this. I'll post it up. Hopefully I've posted it up before this. And as you can see, it comes with a nice powder coat. If I zoom in a little bit here, bring the knife closer, you can see it has a nice rough finish. Now, let me show you another knife, also an SE4, which I bought used, and as you can see, the paint's been stripped off and it has a nice satin finish on it, almost mirror polished. I still have a little bit ways to go. So this is going to be about turning this into this. Let me talk about some of the disadvantages to stripping off the coating and then putting a nice satin finish or a mirror finish on your knife. Main disadvantage is that powder coat protects the blade, especially if it's a carbon steel. If you take this off, you're going to have more surface area that's vulnerable to moisture. So if you use this, you're going to have to dry it off really well, make sure there's no moisture on it whatsoever. You're going to have more area that you're going to have to put lubrication on to protect it, including under the handle scales. You're going to have to probably take off the handle scales. If you don't mind that extra bit of work, that's fine. But this coating actually really does protect it a lot. Also, some of you, I don't know, I'm not really a tactical type guy, but you might hate the reflection that this puts out. You might want something a little bit more covert with a black blade or something like that. I think that's a little bit overrated unless you're like an ops person, in which case, what the hell are you doing at home watching YouTube? You should be out there doing stuff. But anyways, let me talk about some of the advantages to having a strip blade. Number one, it just looks cooler. That is like an aesthetics deal. I just think the nice finish, the shiny finish looks good on the blade. It just makes it a little bit more attractive. I see too many cheap knives. They try to cover up, manufacturers try to cover up their imperfections by just coating it with stuff, and so kind of like I just attach it in my mind that a coated blade is a cheaper knife, whereas you see a lot of the more expensive knives tend to have bare blades. So I mean, personally, I just like the bare blade. Second reason I like it is the fact that the powder coat, depending on the manufacturer, tends to be pretty well put on the blade. Like for example, SE knives, it's really hard to remove the powder coat. You're gonna have to work really hard and put this through a lot of hard use to get this off. And even if it does come off, I've asked around on the SE forums, and they told me that the powder coat is inert. So even if I swallowed this, it's not gonna hurt me. It's just gonna go right through. It's not gonna hurt me whatsoever. But you know, something about having the bare blade makes me more likely to want to use this for food prep than this. So if I need to cut through an apple or prepare dinner, I'm more likely to use this just because it just looks more appealing to cut my food with a bare blade. Now the third reason, which is the main reason I wanted to put this finish on it, is the fact that, let me focus on the blade a little bit more. You see that rough finish? That's fine for most uses, but the fact is, you take your finger and safely do this on the flat of the blade. Take your finger and put it on something that has a rough texture or even a bead blasted texture. See this dull? This is what the knife originally came looking like, this kind of flat gray. Run your finger along this. Feel how it goes along it? Okay. Now take something with a satin finish. Now run your finger along it. If you'll notice, your finger goes by a lot more easily and smoother. So it's not just for aesthetics purposes. The fact that this has a smooth surface means that if I'm cutting through something, the material is going to slide through this a lot more easily. And it'll make it easier for me to cut through thick objects with this knife. So I actually bought this knife used online from some dude on blade forums, and he already had the coating stripped off. So it actually came with this finish. Alright, this kind of dull finish. So all you gotta pretty much have to do if you want to strip the coating is just remove this, these torque screws, take the handle scales off, then find like kind of a tray that you don't mind throwing away, like a plastic tray. Put it in there, pour some paint stripper on it, and just leave it for like an hour or two. Once you're done, just take a paper towel and wear gloves. That stuff's pretty toxic, and just wipe all that stuff off. If it hasn't come off again, just do it again. Just put the blade back down, put another coating of the paint stripper, then leave, come back in another hour, again put on gloves and take some paper towel and just wipe it off. Hopefully you should get something like this gray color right here. Bead blasted is not as good as satin finish in my opinion. Bead blasted, when you look at it, you can feel it. It has pores that are a little bit more open, so it's easier for water to get into the surface of the blade. Whereas if you give a satin finish to it, the pores are closed off, so it's harder for moisture to get inside of the blade. Sort of like your skin. So this is a little bit more porous versus this. So that's actually a fourth advantage to having this kind of a finish. So once you have it a bare blade without any coating, put this away. You're gonna need gloves. You could get away with latex gloves when you're applying the paint stripper, but for the shining I prefer the heavier leather gloves just because you're handling a sharp knife, so better to have this. It's harder for the knife to cut through, but still, you still have to be careful. I usually only use one glove because this will be the hand that's holding the pad, and then the other hand, the bare hand, will be holding the knife. Steel wool right here. You're really only going to need one, so maybe you can bum one off of a friend who has who does hobbies involving like shining or stuff like that. And then this knife, people know this. This is Flitz Polish for metal, plastic, and fiberglass. Let me just read the back. It says it safely cleans, polishes, and protects brass, copper, nickel, silver plate, sterling chrome, stainless steel, bronze, gold, aluminum, anodized aluminum, pewter, factory gun bluing, painted surfaces. Not for electroplate. And it says it removes tarnish, rust, water stains, oxidation, fingerprints, and graffiti. So basically you just take this, you shake it well, apply a little bit of it to, they say a dry towel, and then you just rub with the dry towel. Now I find with the dry towel that it has too smooth of a surface, so all you're going to do is remove stains. If you really want to get a shine on this thing, you're going to need a rougher surface, hence why I'm using the steel wool. So basically what I do is, let me just take this glove off, shake it pretty well, open this up, stupid child-proof lock, dab just a little bit. You don't need a whole lot, so don't dunk a whole lot into it, just put a little bit of a dab on it. Grab your knife. It's kind of hard to reach around the camera and do this. Your steel wool, and here we have an Azula, which I bought used for really cheap because the guy stripped the blade, but as you can see it's got a bunch of tarnishing on it. So I'm just going to keep shining on this. Another disadvantage to having to do this is you're going to need a lot of free time, man. I sat for an hour and a half watching I forget, I think I watched Dumb and Dumber, and I just sat there with a knife in one hand and the steel wool in the other hand, just rubbed for like an hour and a half, and then switched off between hands because one hand would get tired. So you're going to have to rub a lot. So if you have a lot of nervous energy or you got a lot of free time, it's worth it. Otherwise, I don't know, it might be worth it for you to pay to have somebody buff this out. But if you're on a budget and you got free time, this is worth it. So as you can see, there's staining here. So I take the steel wool, put a dab on this side, put a dab on that side, and then basically all I'm going to do is just start rubbing and rubbing and rubbing and rubbing. And now you'll notice that this turquoise paste is going to turn dark, and that's, I don't know if it's true, but I'm thinking it's removing a little bit of the metal as it's polishing it off. Then you're going to get this dark slurry. Now it took me about 3 passes of getting a slurry, wiping it off with towel, and then reapplying, and then wiping some more for like another 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then wiping it off, and then applying a new coat. I don't know if you can get away with it with just one coat, but I was getting bored anyway, so I just felt like cleaning it off. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to rub and rub and rub and rub and rub, and then clean this off, and I'll let you guys see what this looks like after I go with it on the polish. Alright, be right back in an hour. Alright, so as you can see right here, it's a little bit of that slurry I was talking about, pulling off some metal. So basically once you got it to this point, you just take some towel, wipe it off. I like to wash it in between just to get it completely off, and then if you want, just reapply some more of the Flitz. Just rub and rub and rub and rub some more, so I'll be back in a second. Well, I'm done. I'm just drying it off. Basically, after you're done polishing it, I recommend wiping it off with a towel. Then after that, I take it to the sink and use soap and water. And then one thing I would recommend, get an old toothbrush that you are not using anymore and you're about to throw away. Take that, take some soap and water. Just really get into the crevices. One thing that I forgot to mention is the fact that Flitz, I don't have first-hand knowledge, but I've heard that it gets into leather and wood really easily. All my knives have synthetic handles because I don't like natural materials. I like synthetic, so if it gets in there, it might stain it and in places that you don't want on your handle, so that's like kind of a downside. For those with synthetic handles, you're totally fine. Like I got it all over inside the, you might have seen when I was applying it, it got into the micarta. Just take some soap and a toothbrush and just kind of brush it out. So basically I'm just drying it off. Once you're done washing it and cleaning it, make sure you dry it off completely, otherwise you're going to get staining and then you're going to have to reapply the Flitz and polish all over again. It should be easier the second time around. The hardest is when you're going from a bead blast finish to a satin finish. That by far is the hardest. This already had kind of a satin finish, so it actually didn't take me that long. It took me like maybe about 5 minutes of rubbing. So let me just dry this off. Let you have a look here. Let's see if I can get the camera the right angle. See that? Nice. Shiny. So there you go. It's my little project video on polishing your blades. If you guys just kind of like this kind of finish on your knives, it's not that expensive. Just go to your local hardware store, get some work gloves, some steel wool, and some Flitz. It's pretty easy. A lot of people, what they'll do is they'll polish their blades as a precursor and as a setup to putting a patina on it. I don't know too much about it. I'll probably look it up and then experiment with it and do a separate project video on that later. But really liking this finish. So there you go, guys. Thanks for watching and enjoy your Sunday. Bye.